General Hospital spoilers reveal that the revelation that Vaughn has been attacked strikes through the already tense atmosphere like a jagged bolt of lightning, tearing apart whatever fragile calm the people around him might have been clinging to. It is not merely a headline or a piece of whispered gossip, it is a moment that redefines the stakes for everyone connected to him. A single act of violence that becomes the center point of a rapidly expanding storm. Vaughn's life has always been intertwined with complex loyalties and subtle dangers, but this is different. This is no background threat or distant intrigue, it is direct, personal, and immediate. For Vaughn, the attack is not only a physical assault but a shock to the system that reaches deep into his sense of security and control. The shock forces him into a heightened state of vigilance. Every sense sharpened to the point of pain. Questions spiral without answers. Was this a message, a warning, or an outright attempt to remove him from the board entirely? Was it the result of a long-brewing vendetta or a sudden decision by someone who saw him as an obstacle to be eliminated? The need to understand the why becomes all-consuming, pushing him into an obsessive loop where every memory of recent conversations, every look exchanged in the past weeks, and every unexplained moment becomes potential evidence. Vaughn is not a man easily rattled, but this attack cuts through his usual composure, replacing measured caution with an edge of urgency he can neither hide nor suppress. The news of what happened to him travels quickly, carried on urgent whispers and abrupt phone calls. And it reaches Jocelyn at a time when she is already deeply unsettled by the shifting dynamics around the five Poppies. She had suspected for some time that trouble was brewing there. But suspicion is a soft, shapeless thing compared to the sharp clarity of confirmation. Vaughn's attack is that confirmation, the undeniable proof that the threats circling the five Poppies are no longer abstract possibilities. The danger has stepped out of the shadows and into the open. And with it comes the realization that no one connected to that place is truly safe. Jocelyn feels the weight of this knowledge settle over her like a physical pressure. The five Poppies had always carried an undercurrent of mystery, an atmosphere that hinted at histories and alliances not fully visible to outsiders. But she had learned to navigate it with a degree of caution and confidence. Now, the balance has shifted. What had been a place she could approach strategically is becoming a battlefield where each step forward risks triggering consequences she cannot fully predict or control. Vaughn's blood, his bruises, and his shaken voice, these are not symbols to her, they are a visceral reminder that the walls of the five Poppies cannot keep danger out, and that sometimes, danger walks freely within them. For Vaughn, the obsession to uncover the truth grows by the hour. Sleep becomes a distant luxury as he replays the attack in his mind, searching for anything he missed, the sound of footsteps, the angle of a shadow, the weight behind each blow. He considers his enemies, both known and suspected, and begins mentally cataloging their motives, resources, and methods. This process is not just about survival, it is about reclaiming control. Vaughn knows that as long as he is in the dark, he is vulnerable, and that vulnerability is something he cannot abide. Each unanswered question gnaws at him, feeding the obsession until it becomes the lens through which he views every interaction and every decision. Jocelyn, meanwhile, cannot ignore the ripple effects she feels moving through her own life. Vaughn's attack forces her to reconsider every conversation she has had at the five Poppies. Every piece of information she has shared, every person she has trusted. She knows that in environments like this, danger rarely comes alone, it travels in packs, with one incident masking the approach of another. The five Poppies is no longer just a backdrop to a larger game, it is an active and dangerous player in its own right. And the forces moving within it are beginning to act without restraint. What makes this moment so volatile is that Vaughn's obsession and Jocelyn's realization are happening in parallel, feeding off each other without either of them fully aware of it. Vaughn's push for answers will inevitably stir currents that reach the five Poppies, pulling threads that may unravel secrets Jocelyn has only begun to glimpse. At the same time, Jocelyn's heightened awareness will make her more attuned to shifts in behavior, more likely to catch the small signs of brewing trouble, signs that could either help her anticipate the next strike or put her directly in its path. The atmosphere around the five Poppies begins to change in ways that are both subtle and unmistakable. Conversations drop to a hush when certain names are mentioned. Familiar faces take on new expressions, guarded, calculating, or faintly predatory. The usual rhythm of activity feels off, as though everyone is holding their breath, waiting for something they cannot quite name. To those who are watching closely, Vaughn's attack is not an isolated event, it is the opening move in something larger. A signal that whatever restraint had been keeping the danger in check has now been removed. In this charged environment, every decision takes on new weight. For Vaughn, each step he takes toward uncovering the truth could also be a step closer to provoking another attack. For Jocelyn, every choice about where to be and who to trust could mean the difference between staying one step ahead and finding herself caught in the center of the storm. The knowledge that danger is no longer speculative but active forces both of them to adjust their thinking, their strategies, and even their instincts. The Five Poppies itself seems to pulse with this new energy, its walls holding the echoes of whispered plans and hidden threats. To an outsider, it might still look like the same place. But for those attuned to its rhythms, it has become something more volatile, a place where the line between opportunity and disaster has blurred to the point of invisibility. Vaughn's attack is the clearest marker yet that the balance has tipped, that the forces in play are no longer content to operate in the background. And for Jocelyn, it is the moment when she understands that the game has changed, and that from here on, every move will be made under the shadow of danger that is no longer content to wait. What neither of them can yet see is how far the consequences of this single shock will reach. Vaughn's determination to find the truth will set off a chain reaction, pulling in players who have been waiting for an excuse to act. Jocelyn's awareness of the danger will push her to make connections and choices she might otherwise avoid, drawing her deeper into the web. The Five Poppies will continue to hum with the tension of a place on the edge of eruption. And those who move within it will have to decide whether they can control the explosion or simply survive it when it comes. In the end, Vaughn's attack is not just one man's ordeal. It is the turning point that proves the danger is real, immediate, and unbound. It is the spark that sets obsessions alight and forces realizations into the open. And as Jocelyn looks around the Five Poppies, seeing it now with new eyes, she understands that the storm is no longer on its way, it is already here. And it is only a matter of time before it consumes everything in its path. The situation has entered a volatile, almost surgical stage of manipulation, shaped entirely by a new and deliberate adjustment that is both invisible to most and devastating in its implications. At the core of it lies a single, potent fact: Vaughn remains utterly unaware that Britt is alive. This is not an accident, not a matter of simple oversight. It is the result of a controlled decision. A piece of strategic engineering designed to keep Vaughn blind to the truth. The one orchestrating this concealment, Pascal, is not merely avoiding the spread of information. He is actively sealing every crack through which the truth might leak, ensuring that Britt's survival never touches the streets of Port Charles. This calculated suppression is itself proof that something far larger and far more dangerous is at play. Pascal's motives are layered. Preventing the knowledge of Britt's survival from surfacing is not just about protecting Britt, nor is it solely about controlling Vaughn. It is about shaping the entire battlefield, controlling the emotional, political, and operational ripples that would explode if the truth came out. In his mind, this is an adjustment of the highest order, a reorientation of the players so that every move they make, knowingly or not, feeds into the containment plan he is crafting. Vaughn's ignorance is the centerpiece of that plan. As long as Vaughn has no idea Britt is alive, he cannot take actions that might interfere with whatever long-term outcome Pascal is working toward. But keeping someone in the dark has a cost. That cost is most visible in the kind of trouble Vaughn is already facing. The choking attack he endured, sudden, brutal, and almost fatal, may seem on the surface like an isolated incident, a warning or an act of intimidation from some unknown rival. In reality, it is part of the same structure of control. Violence is being used to keep Vaughn's focus fixed on immediate survival, to ensure he is constantly reacting to the threats in front of him rather than asking the deeper questions that might lead him toward Britt's existence. The shock of nearly losing his life keeps him in a defensive crouch, a place where he is less likely to notice the invisible lines of the bigger game being played around him. For Jocelyn, This adjustment is not abstract, it is becoming personal. She may not have the full picture yet, but she can feel the temperature changing. Her instincts, honed by past brushes with danger, tell her that something about the 5 Poppies and its surrounding events has shifted into a higher gear. Vaughn's attack is a clear escalation. And she knows enough to understand that when violence enters the equation, the danger is not contained to its immediate target. Her proximity to Vaughn, her involvement in the same circles, and her own curiosity make her a potential problem for the same people who want Vaughn kept in the dark. The logic is simple and ruthless. If Jocelyn begins to suspect the truth about Britt, she could unintentionally unravel Pascal's carefully constructed wall of secrecy. That makes her as dangerous, in her own way, as Vaughn would be if he knew. The moment she starts asking the wrong questions or lingering in the wrong places, she becomes a liability. And in a game where information control is the highest priority, liabilities are not tolerated for long. The new adjustment Pascal has engineered, then, is twofold. First, it keeps Britt's survival buried so deep that no one outside a tight inner circle can confirm it. Second, it channels all of Vaughn's and Jocelyn's attention toward more immediate, more visible dangers, the attack, the threats, the volatile atmosphere at the 5 Poppies, so that neither of them has the space or clarity to dig beneath the surface. It is a form of psychological and situational management, forcing them to expend energy on the wrong front while the real battle stays hidden. This is a kind of control that feeds on itself. The more Vaughn tries to secure his safety in the wake of the attack, the more he must move within predictable, limited channels, places and people Pascal can monitor or manipulate. The more Jocelyn focuses on protecting herself and those around her from the immediate threats, the less time she has to notice the subtle inconsistencies that might point toward Britt's survival. Both are being maneuvered without realizing it, their actions guided by the very dangers they are trying to escape. The trouble is that these adjustments are not static. They evolve as circumstances shift, and each evolution carries its own risks. Pascal may believe he can keep this control intact indefinitely, but control is fragile in Port Charles. A single misstep, a careless word from the wrong person, a document that isn't properly destroyed, an overheard conversation, could shatter the structure he has built. And the higher the stakes, the more dangerous the fallout when that structure collapses. In the meantime, the threat to Vaughn's life remains real and immediate. He may not connect the dots yet, but the attack against him was not random. It was a message, perhaps from more than one sender, and its purpose was not only to harm but to limit the lingering trauma from the choking. The hyper-awareness of every shadow and every sound behind him are psychological chains meant to bind his movements and narrow his scope of thought. Vaughn's survival now depends on his ability to operate within those constraints while still finding ways to reclaim the initiative, a task made infinitely harder by the fact that he doesn't even know the most important piece of information in play. For Jocelyn, the challenge is different but no less perilous. She has to decide whether to lean into her instincts, following the trail of unease until it leads her to answers, or to pull back and protect herself from becoming the next target. Each day, each interaction, sharpens her awareness that the danger at the 5 Poppies is not only escalating but expanding, touching people who might once have thought themselves beyond its reach. Her growing suspicion is a dangerous thing, both to her and to those trying to keep Britt's existence hidden, because suspicion is the first step toward investigation. An investigation is the death of secrecy. The convergence of these threads, Vaughn's ignorance, Pascal's suppression of Britt's survival, the physical violence meant to enforce control, and Jocelyn's creeping awareness of danger, creates a volatile environment where every move matters. This is not a moment that will fade quietly into the background. It is a slow-building storm. One in which the wind has already shifted, the clouds have already gathered, and the first strikes of lightning have already been seen. And when the storm breaks fully, it will not be limited to Vaughn or Jocelyn. The truth about Britt's survival, once revealed, will reshape alliances, reignite old vendettas, and dismantle the carefully placed adjustments that Pascal and others have worked so hard to maintain. But until that moment comes, Vaughn will continue fighting enemies he can see. Jocelyn will continue navigating dangers she can sense. And both of them will remain unaware that the most dangerous piece on the board, the one that could change everything, is still very much alive. Waiting for the right moment to return to Port Charles. Jason will soon find himself staring at a photograph that detonates like a bomb in his mind, an image sent by Jocelyn, capturing undeniable proof that Britt is alive. The picture is raw, unfiltered, the kind of evidence that leaves no room for doubt. In it, Britt's eyes are filled with the urgency of someone trapped between survival and exposure, and the background, though blurred, carries the unmistakable signature of the 5 Poppies. For Jason, the shock is not only in seeing her alive after so much time, but in realizing that Jocelyn must have gotten close enough to capture the moment, close enough to the epicenter of a danger that has already been tightening its grip on Vaughn. This single photograph becomes the catalyst for an entirely new obsession. Jason has always been a man who moves with precision, weighing each step, but this time the equation changes. The stakes are no longer abstract. 3 people he knows, 3 lives, are tangled in a web of threats that have been growing more complex with each passing day. Britt, hidden from the world and clearly under some form of control. Jocelyn, who has now painted a target on her back by even having this image in her possession. Vaughn, already weakened by the choking attack that left him shaken and vulnerable, now an even greater liability to those who want the truth buried. The new adjustment, in Jason's mind, is immediate and absolute. There can be no hesitation. In the past, he might have taken days to assemble intelligence, to draw in trusted allies, to dismantle the threat piece by piece. Now, the window for careful planning has shrunk to nothing. The 5 Poppies is not a static threat, it is an evolving pressure point. A place where each moment increases the risk to everyone inside its reach. That means Jason must adapt in real time, recalibrating his usual methods to meet the urgency of a rescue that could spiral into chaos if even one move is delayed. But this adjustment is more than tactical. It is psychological. Seeing Britt alive reignites a part of Jason that has been dormant, the fierce, uncompromising determination to protect her at all costs, no matter what lines have to be crossed. Coupled with his protective instinct toward Jocelyn and his growing sense that Vaughn has been left exposed by forces he doesn't even understand, Jason finds himself in the grip of an obsession that won't let him sleep until all 3 of them are out of harm's way. It's not just about pulling them from danger. It's about dismantling the entire mechanism of control at the 5 Poppies so it can't pull anyone else under. The problem is that this obsession runs parallel to the danger itself. Whoever is orchestrating Britt's captivity has already demonstrated a willingness to use violence to keep their secrets intact. Vaughn's attack is proof enough of that. By moving to extract all 3 targets, Jason risks forcing the enemy's hand, accelerating whatever plan they might have for silencing witnesses or eliminating liabilities. This means that every move he makes will have to be an adjustment to the last, a constant rebalancing of speed and subtlety, aggression and caution. Inside the 5 Poppies, the atmosphere is already shifting. People are talking in clipped, guarded tones. Those who know about Britt are watching for signs of an imminent breach in secrecy. And those who don't know are sensing the tension without understanding its cause. Jason, from the outside, can feel the pressure building, and the photograph in his hand becomes both a roadmap and a warning. It tells him where Britt is. But it also tells him that she is surrounded by a structure of danger tight enough that Jocelyn's brief glimpse could have already triggered consequences. The new adjustment in Jason's approach is not simply about mounting a rescue, it is about controlling the entire narrative from the moment he makes his first move. He knows that once he enters the 5 Poppies, there will be no second chances. Britt will have to be pulled out without alerting those who would try to stop him. Jocelyn will have to be extracted without leaving a trail that points back to her involvement. Vaughn, still recovering and possibly under surveillance, will have to be secured before the people who tried to choke the life out of him decide to finish the job. Every instinct Jason has tells him that this operation will require him to become something more than just a protector. He will need to be a ghost in the middle of a storm, moving so quietly that the walls of the 5 Poppies won't even know they've been breached until it's over. But he also knows that obsessions like this, once set in motion, have a way of consuming everything around them. And in this case, the stakes are so personal, so immediate, that he may not be able to stop himself from burning through every obstacle in his path. If this adjustment holds, if Jason can stay ahead of the threat without triggering it, Britt, Jocelyn, and Vaughn might make it out alive. But if even one element of the plan slips, the very thing that drives him now, the obsession to save them, could be the spark that ignites the full fury of the danger inside the 5 Poppies. And once that fury is unleashed, there will be no safe ground left for anyone.